I'm sorry that I had to cut off the Minister of Education when he was in full flight, because I know how much he enjoys that. But I'm pleased to have an opportunity to join this debate on Government Motion 16. I have done my best to listen from my annex office on the Tannoy to follow up on the parts that I missed by reading the Hansard. So I'll apologize in advance if I have misunderstood or missed somebody putting something on the record, but I don't think I have. What I heard in listening over the 2 days was essentially two debates running concurrently or woven together. One was a debate about the content of the Motion 16, and a second was an ongoing debate about the process that we're involved in today. So let me look at the debate around the motion itself. And I'm just going to remind myself what the motion actually said, because it's worth reviewing at this point. Or maybe not. Sorry about that. Now I can't find it. Essentially, that we're looking at the idea of Alberta bonds being considered by the province. And so I read the remarks from the Finance Minister as she laid this out on Tuesday. And she had some very good points in the way she laid it out about what she was looking for from people, and some questions that she put on the record that she wanted to see answered. Of course, exactly when I need this, I can't find it. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. There it is. So I'm on page 1578 of the Hansard from October the 27th. So she essentially put a couple of things out that she was looking for. And the first, there's been a lot of discussion about it, although in fact it's not. Oh, there it is. So we're talking about Motion 16, be it resolved that the Assembly approve in general the issue of Alberta Capital Bonds by the government in support of the development of public infrastructure projects and facilities. So then she talks about, and a lot of people have talked about, how much Albertans want to invest in this. And that, of course, is not in the text of the motion, but the Minister of Finance did mention that Albertans are looking for a way to proudly invest in the province, is the way she put it. Then she got into some questions that she was seeking advice through debate on the motion. A couple of things: the type of bond that should be offered, who should be able to buy the bonds, offering 3-year sort of the rate of interest, or whether it should be a fixed rate of interest over the life of the bond or a variable rate, shorter and longer, minimum and maximum amounts available for purchase, whether it would be RRSP eligible, where suggestions on where it could be available to purchase, and what kind of interest rate should be offered. And interestingly, I didn't hear a lot of debates that answered those specific questions, but there was a lot of sort of visioning and
blue sky.
Blue skying. That's fair, of what people imagined this could result in. Fair enough, if that's the way people wanted to debate it. But from our side, the official opposition side, we had a number of issues, and actually we did try a little closer to answer some of the questions that she had raised. And the Minister of Education and others have raised a number of times the credit rating that this province receives. But the idea of fiscal management is larger than a credit rating, and it's not only about comparing ourselves with outsiders, but also comparing ourselves with ourselves and with our own performance over the years. And of course, the one big thing that we're dealing with right now is we've gone from $8 billion up to $7 billion down in a period of about 15 months, 12 to 15 months. So on our own performance, I think that argues that there's a fairly significant turnaround here. And is the government responsible for some or all of that? Most definitely. Are they responsible for all of it? No, clearly not. There's a lot of people who suffered a downturn in their finances. I'm not going to lay that whole issue at their door. But did they make choices that would have made this worse for us? Yes, I would argue that they did. Now, the second part of this is the limits that are placed, and we brought forward a number of amendments yesterday to try and put some limits on that motion. So the idea that there would be a maximum of $250 million that would be borrowed through the issuance, through the creation of this debt. In other words, we couldn't embrace a debt of larger than $250 million through the issuance of this bond. That we would not go into debt for longer than 10 years with the issuance of this bond, and that we would have an Alberta First policy for those who would be the recipients of the contracting work that flowed through the infrastructure projects that were enabled through this bond. And those were the concerns that we raised, and we put them in the form of amending motions to the motion because we wanted to make sure that they were recorded and we were able to refer to them later. And it's a way of getting the discussion on the floor, which it clearly did. Now, Mr. Speaker, there's a number of reasons for debt. And, of course, you don't ever want to be incurring debt for operating because that money's gone and you have nothing to show for it other than the fact that you ate a meal, but again, it's gone. You provided a program, but it's gone. You have no tangible asset for it. Going into debt for capital projects is a different matter entirely. You end up with an asset. And what we need to be careful of here is that the money that we borrow now so people can enjoy it or make use of the infrastructure today, which is equivalent to someone taking out a mortgage for a home. You're not going to save your money until you're 60 and you've saved that $350,000 and can go out and buy a home now. You're going to buy that home when you're 30 or 35, get a mortgage and pay that money off over the life of that so that you can enjoy it at a good time in your life. And that's what we're looking at doing now. But that's where we have to make, we have to be careful that we're doing that in the right way. We have to be careful that that the money is paid off, that debt is paid off before the asset is either used up, we need to rebuild it, or we need to put massive amounts of money into it. So those were the issues that the official opposition has concerns about around the issuance of these bonds. Now, the second thing that's happened was a lot of questions about whether we were able or why were we raising issues like this around a motion, and in fact the member for Peace River just raised it again today. But when I went and looked in my documents, in fact, you were certainly allowed to do that because in Beauchesne 552, it does say quite clearly that you can put a motion before the floor. That's okay. That's what you're supposed to do. And that you can also amend it. And that appears in Beauchesne 567 and 569. 567 says the object of an amendment may be to either modify a question in such a way as to increase its acceptability or to present to the House a different proposition as an alternative to the original question. It also references Erskine May there on page 395. And of course, 569, a motion may be amended by leaving out certain words in order to insert other words, or inserting or adding other words. And there's a second section there as well. So certainly, what the official opposition was doing yesterday was well in order, and that was reflected in the rulings from the Speaker. But there's been some discussion that, well, this is just a general motion and we should just talk generally to it and trust that at some point we'll be able to get down to the nitty-gritty of it. But what I looked for very carefully was any kind of a guarantee from anyone that there would be legislation that would be to follow. And all I could find was remarks that this would come up again in the budget debate. Well, the way the budget debate is structured now, it's done in committee, and if we're lucky, members of the official opposition might get in maybe 2 at-bats, maybe 20 minutes of questions for an entire department. So to be able to concentrate on one issue, such as the issuance of bonds, as a part of the debate on the entire Department of Finance would not satisfy what we would be looking for as a vigorous give and take and debate. So of course we can use this opportunity over the last couple of days